j'ai du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
But we remain, beyond that, without any national testing plan. And without good access to testing all over the country, our data continues to be all over the place. Yeah, New York State's doing a lot of testing, but every state is having to make do on its own in terms of how many people they're testing, how they're doing it, and how they're getting access to the materials they need to do that testing. With the patchwork of systems and different levels of government trying to put together a response, we're starting, we have some data about how many cases that we've got. We've got some snapshots, some places. Some states tell us more information than others. I mean, we know enough to know we have the worst outbreak on earth by far. But the details of where it's the worst, frankly, they just have to trickle up through the seams. We don't have a national response, and so we don't have national information. And so you look at local coverage sometimes to find out where things are at their worst. This was local news coverage today, for example, from Hayward, California. Coverage of a local nursing home in Hayward where of the 35 residents who have tested positive in that facility, 6 have already died. Staff has started to test positive at that facility in pretty good numbers as well. I only came across this local news report today because Hayward is the city in California where I was born. It's right near where I was born and where I grew up. And so this happened to catch my eye today, this tragedy in Hayward, California. But just try this. If you have some spare internet access, if you have a few minutes, look around at the local press where you grew up, or where you were born, or where your parents live now, or where your grown kids or grandkids have moved off to. Just pick a place somewhere in this country. Pick the last American place you went on vacation. Or pick the last town where you got a speeding ticket when you were driving on some cross-country trip. Pick anywhere in this country and look at the local press there. And I will tell you, what you will find, more likely than not, is a story, at least one, about a nursing home, an assisted living facility, a long-term care facility, a group home for adults with disabilities, a soldier's home for elderly veterans. You will find at least one local story about a congregate living facility, particularly for disabled or elderly Americans, where they've got cases, where they've got deaths, where the staff is testing positive, and they've got profound worries, and they do not know what they're going to do. I mean, just pick it anywhere. I mean, here's Kentucky just tonight. COVID-19 spreading quickly in dozens of Kentucky nursing homes. 152 infected, 16 dead. Here's the Seattle Times. Coronavirus spreads to 163 long-term care facilities in Washington state, killing more than 200 people. Here's Richmond, Virginia. One facility, 39 deaths among residents at that one facility. 49 other residents with symptoms already. 25 staff testing positive. Here's San Antonio, Texas. 84 residents, 67 of those 84 residents already known to be infected. Here's footage of the Magnolia Rehabilitation and Nursing Care Center in Riverside County, California, in Southern California. This footage looks like disaster response because it is. What this shows is the one-by-one evacuation of all of the residents in that facility. They found out that of the 84 residents in that facility, at least 34 of them were positive. And the staff was starting to test positive too. And when most of the staff just started not showing up, when the staff just didn't show up to staff that facility for 2 days in a row. First, they sent in nurses, they sent in extra medical care workers to try to bolster capacity at that facility to keep people alive. But when too much of the staff just didn't turn up 2 days in a row, they called it off. They evacuated. The patients were taken one by one to other facilities they will find for them somewhere in Southern California. Talking about maybe even some of them will go to the Navy hospital ship, the Mercy, that's in Los Angeles. The crisis of coronavirus ripping through American nursing homes and American long-term care facilities, that is everywhere. That story is ubiquitous. But you have to look in the local news to find it, right? You'll occasionally you'll get national news outlets covering it in a survey way, the way I just did, or a national scope paper like the New York Times will do a survey piece about it. But look in local news outlets. You will find that all over this country, rural, urban, suburban, everywhere, their long-term care facilities, the places where elderly people are held in congregate, are already creaking under the weight of this thing, and they have no idea what to do. The crisis in nursing home and long-term care facilities will account for a huge swath of the American death toll, unless something is done to address this systematically. I mean, there is, as yet, no national help for this. There is no national strategy for this. There's no national information about this. You literally have to follow local news outlets around the country to try to get your arms around it. But without a federal response to speak of on anything, let alone on this, the most acute crises for the most vulnerable people, it's just part of the scramble we need to do just as citizens to even follow what's happening in our country, to follow who's dying and who's most at risk of dying and who needs help and who's trying to keep people from dying and doesn't know how to do it, doesn't know how to staff these facilities safely now that the staff is testing positive too, now that the staff is sometimes not showing up.
It is Friday, the 10th of April of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. Well, the French 77s are mixed and poured, ready for your virtual imbibing, and if you happen to be with the proper ingredients for a proper French 77, be aware that even while sheltering in place, this spirit is a potent spirit, so take care. Hopefully you have someone nearby that you're allowed to breathe the same air, you can help pick each other up if you happen to imbibe a little bit too much. But don't do that. Don't do that. It's for pleasure, not for knocking yourself out. That's for other substances to do. Okay, well, Bill Barr is up to his old tricks again. I guess whoever the powers that be decided that Bill Barr better get out there to give a sober face to the right-wing fascist takeover of the United States of America. And let's add some Christo-fascism to that as well. Bill Barr is out there saying that, all successful societies have a vibrant religious life. Excuse me? I'll tell you about vibrant religious life, and some might call that the Reformation and all the terrible things that occurred during it because of vibrant religious lives. Okay, he doesn't mean anything but his narrow interpretation of Christianity. Okay, let's be clear. I'm pretty sure that at this point, Bill Barr looks at Opus Dei as being, some coven of commie cucks. And they're just too liberal for him. And that the elders of Zion is the only true gospel. We're going to find that out. We are. We think that Bill Barr's Christo-fascism ends with Opus Dei. I think it goes a little bit further to the right than that. Because Bill Barr is Bill Barr, and he should be John Mitchell now more than ever. He's he's upset, and we will be speaking about that, this particular occurrence. He's upset about the media disrespecting Trump over his miracle cure. Maybe he wrote a 12-page introductory letter about how to lie in a pandemic. You would think that Pence was good enough for that, but apparently Pence isn't enough, since he's locked in as the pandemic response spokesman. Pence does, I actually have to admit, Pence does a pretty good job of adding that, oh, so concerned face to this pandemic and all the dangers. We got to reopen our government somehow. Why is Fox calling for the removal of Dr. Fauci? Why are they perpetuating a lie that Dr. Fauci apparently wants to get rid of Trump? On the other hand, anybody in their right mind would want to. So it makes me wonder where Fox is getting their marching orders. At least the Laura Ingraham and Hannity wing. I guess we got to put Perot in there too. I would say O'Reilly, but he's not at Fox anymore. He's in his own basement. And, he was out just, was it yesterday or the day before, complaining that, hey, these people who are dying from COVID-19 were really on their last legs. Have you seen O'Reilly talking about being on their last legs? Boy, put him and Limbaugh, or he and Limbaugh together, and they're on their last legs. You would think they might be a little bit more self-reflective than that. Speaking of Limbaugh, he's out there making political proclamations when he should be having some sort of deep philosophical discussion about the meaning of life, existence, and the great beyond. You would think. But some people, I guess they just have to keep doing their work right up to the end. For we the living, though, who would prefer to live in a representative democracy in our last days, these traitors to country and life itself really need to be frog-marched to a federal pen. The sooner, the better. They're going to do it to us. You just know it. I can't get past this possibility. Dating sites and job placement companies are going to go full on Gattaca. You just know it. And there's going to be a whole black market on selling pure blood to those who have been tainted by the virus and therefore should not be in proper society. It's going to happen. They have the tools. They have the wherewithal. They have the motivation. It's something they've really wanted to do for quite a while, eugenics. That's the only way to, make America great again, I guess. Just remember, Hitler didn't come up with a whole eugenics, let's get rid of the Jews as a final solution model on his own. No, in real time, he cited the United States eugenics movement at the turn of the century, from the 1800s to the 1900s, as the talisman that he had to follow. That's it. That's what's going to make Germany great again. Okay. We could go on, but there's so much more news out there than we've had to really hone it in and curate a show for you. At the top, that was Rachel insisting that the lack of a national COVID testing program is leaving nursing homes and assisted care facilities for the elderly the most at risk. And then I started thinking about Stephen Miller talking about useless eaters. All the other libertarians talking about useless eaters. I remember a debate of GOP right-wingers running for president, where one asked A. Paul, what do we do about people who are sick? And someone in the audience said, let them die. Let them die. So if nursing homes and assisted care facilities for the elderly are the most at risk, is that a feature and not a bug. On the rest of the menu, here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Pentagon leaders say more Navy ships face outbreaks like the one aboard the Theodore Roosevelt that infected 400 sailors. And we're talking hundreds and hundreds of naval ships. Bill Barr whined that the media is on a jihad for reporting the truth about Trump's miracle drug. And Dr. Anthony Fauci insisted there is absolutely no evidence the coronavirus death toll is being inflated. But nobody asked if higher totals are actually being suppressed. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Pacific Island nations stay vigilant against the coronavirus pandemic in the aftermath of the Cat 5 Cyclone Harold. And the center-right U.S. Research Institute, the Jamestown Foundation, said Russia's move to label it undesirable will not affect its operations. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is our chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the page from the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will then notice the link to our Patreon page. And if you could afford the cost of an espresso-type coffee drink sent to us once a month, send those funds to us once a month, we are able to stretch those dollars on the quantum level beyond all compare. Because, things only exist when you can measure them in the quantum level. But thank you for your generosity in doing that, for those of you who have. And we implore others to do so as well. Your generosity allows us to fulfill our civic duty of being resistance radio as the founders originally intended so many decades ago. And we have been doing this ourselves here on Netroots Radio for the last 9 years, because even though the bulk of what we do and how we do it comes out of our own wallets, we would be unable to do it without you. And thank you for your generosity. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. Thank you, Tom. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary from there on social media about 10 minutes before showtime. And except for Facebook, because I've got, 4 more days left? 4 more. So we'll see how long I get to post there before Parscali and the rest have me suspended. And I'm not the only one they're doing it to. Oh, my. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., 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 etc. Well, with Bernie dropping out, I wonder if I'm going to get some friends back. I mean, there were some friends towards the end there that basically made a line in the sand, saying that if I don't save the world and all of life itself by publicly, loudly, and on bended knee endorse Bernie, well, then they just won't be my friends anymore. And I told them, whoever is going to be the Democratic candidate, that's who I'm voting for. But that wasn't good enough. So now that he's dropped out, are people going to vote for Trump? Trump's already talking about, we got a lot of Bernie people last time. And I know he did, at least anecdotally. There were quite a few here in my little burg of Rogue River who purported to have been Bernie voters. who had to vote for Trump because of that woman. Well, I got to tell you, I voted for the email lady. I sometimes wonder how life would be so very, very different. How many more people would be alive if, say, 70,000 voters across 3 states also voted for the email lady. This is essentially our choice now. You can vote for fascism or you can vote for democracy. It is your choice. And there's only one candidate that will assure we have democracy. And you know who that is. Starts with a B. All right, let's dive into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Who's going to be Biden's VP? Nod. You know, some people are saying, oh, hey, maybe we should have Klobuchar. Or maybe we should have Stacey Abrams. Well, I think Kamala would be a good one. I have stated that I wish Kamala could be AG, because I would just love to see her go after those that need to be getting after. But I'm hoping that Biden chooses her as VP. That'll be a strong statement. And I also hope Biden says, oh, we got to look forward and not look backwards. We got to let these scofflaws go. No, we can't. Not this time. Not ever again. All right, this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy comes out of the Associated Press. Pentagon leaders anticipate that the coronavirus may strike more Navy ships. Once again, it's not the coronavirus. It is coronavirus. It is the COVID-19 virus. The Netroots Radio Style Manual stipulates it is coronavirus, not the coronavirus, because there's many coronaviruses. Come on, Associated Press, where's your style manual in this? All right, back to the article at hand. Well, coronavirus may strike more Navy ships at sea after an outbreak aboard an aircraft carrier in the Pacific infected more than 400 sailors, a top general said. What's a general talking about what an admiral should be saying? General John Hyten, vice chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, oh, that's why he's the vice chair, said one member of the crew of the USS Theodore Roosevelt was hospitalized yesterday, Thursday, in intensive care on Guam, where the carrier has been docked for more than a week. He said 416 crew members are now infected, and that 1,164 test results are pending. It's not a good idea to think that the Teddy Roosevelt is a one-of-a-kind issue, Hyten told the Pentagon news conference. We have too many ships at sea to think it will never happen again. And that's not a good way to plan. Well, Trump's going to get mad at this guy for being so negative. Think positive. We'll all live that way, won't we? The Navy's top officer, meanwhile, said the biggest problem is the inability to test enough people quickly, including those aboard the Nimitz, the next U.S.-based aircraft carrier, due to deploy out to sea. The challenge that we have now is having that type of capability where we can test in volume and at speed. Admiral Mike Gilday told a small number of reporters, I really don't have a good estimate right now on when that testing capability might be available in the kinds of quantities we would like to see, because your federal government is stealing tests and medical supplies from hospitals. From hospitals. Not going into the hospital and stealing them, but pretty much hijacking the trucks that are going to deliver the material that hospitals and states have purchased. Stealing them, pirating them, hijacking the trucks. Just like a mobster. Emily Singer of the American Independent brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life, even while sheltering in place. Attorney General William Barr defended Trump's response to the coronavirus outbreak and attacked the media's coverage of the pandemic, baselessly accusing the press of trying to discredit an experimental treatment for COVID-19 disease simply because Trump supports it. No, it's because the studies have not been made and people are dying from the side effects, Bill. The politicization of decisions like hydroxychloroquine has been amazing to me, Barr said in an interview with Fox News' Laura Ingraham. Before the president said anything about it, there was a fair and balanced coverage of this very promising drug. Fair and balanced on Fox, too? And the fact that it had such a long track record that the risk was pretty well known. As soon as he said something positive about it, the media has been on a jihad to discredit the drug. It's quite strange. John Mitchell, this guy now. Now, Trump has been pushing the use of hydroxychloroquine, an anti-malarial drug, for days as a possible treatment for COVID-19. And I wonder how many more in Trump's family besides he has financial interests in the miracle drug. I just wonder. Despite Barr's claim, the media has, in fact, reported on comments from experts, including Trump's own coronavirus task force member Anthony Fauci, who stressed that the drug is unproven and should be approached with caution. The data are really just at best suggestive, Fauci said in an appearance on CBS's Face the Nation. There have been cases that show there have been an effect, and there are others that show there's no effect. So I think, in terms of science, I don't think we could definitively say it works. Trump began pushing the drug as a possible treatment for COVID-19 based on reports from two small studies that were also flawed, by the way, out of China and France. And you got to look at the guy from France. He looks just like Trump's doctor. The one that says, oh, he's like the best in shape person who's ever run for president of the United States. Remember that guy? Now, the French study had just 16 patients, 16 of whom received hydroxychloroquine as a treatment. And of those, 12 died. So they essentially pretty much didn't count the deaths. But let's not count those deaths. That's why the French study was flawed. What's more, a different Chinese study found that the drug was not any better for treating COVID-19 than conventional care. And aside from attacking the media, Barr also questioned the social distancing measures put in place to stop the spread of COVID-19, saying they were draconian and calling for them to be eased in May. I think he's been watching too much OAN. Fox isn't enough for this guy. He's been watching too much One American Network. News Network, I guess is what it's called. He was laudatory of Trump, who said he is acting really statesmanlike, adding that Trump is trying to bring people together. Really? Trump, however, has attacked governors who are desperately pleading for help from the federal government to address the pandemic. And he smeared members of the media who asked questions about the virus, calling them horrid, and telling another female reporter of color to be nice and not threatening. Well, that's one way to bring people together. Oliver Willis of the American Independent brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Conservative media figures have begun promoting conspiracy theories that the number of deaths attributable to coronavirus are being artificially inflated. Dr. Anthony Fauci, a member of the White House Coronavirus Task Force and director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, dismissed those theories in an interview yesterday, Thursday, with Samantha Guthrie. Guthrie said, "You weighed in on a theory that's been floating around that perhaps the number of fatalities related to COVID-19 is being inflated because people are actually dying of other things. What's your read on that theory?" Well, Fauci replied, "There is absolutely no evidence that that's the case at all. I think it falls under the category of something that's very unfortunate," he said. "These conspiracy theories that we hear about, every time we have a crisis of any sort, there's always this popping up with conspiracy theories. I think the deaths that we are seeing are coronavirus deaths, and the other deaths are not being counted as coronavirus deaths." Now, Guthrie interjected, on the flip side of that, do you think there's a potential that we're undercounting coronavirus deaths? Because unfortunately, we see in New York, these people are dying at home, and there has been a persistent lack of testing. Well, someone did ask a question about undercounting. Thank you, Samantha. "That's a good point," Fauci said. "I think there's more of a chance of missing some that are really coronavirus deaths that are not being counted. But I don't think the number is significant enough to really substantially modify the trends that we're seeing at all." Well, I guess Anthony Fauci will not be part of this task force by the beginning of next week. What do you wager? All right, let's get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, getting the job done. Danielle Crudy and Bridget Savage Cole first connected doing DIY film projects in New York City. They held each other's cameras for a couple of years before deciding to write together. But to write about what? Well, they were both Catholic, they both loved their mothers, and they were both obsessed with the ocean. And from these seeds and 8 years of work came the wonderful fictional winter fishing town of Easter Cove, Maine, the setting for Crudy and Cole's first feature, Blow the Man Down. It's 2019, and Mary Margaret Connolly has just died, and her death sets off events for two groups of survivors. One is a trio of friends and under-the-radar matriarchs who are now free to take care of an increasingly unsavory element in the town. The other is her pair of young adult daughters, Mary Beth, who put off college for her mother's decline, now eager to get the hell out of town, and Priscilla, burdened with a stack of medical bills, an underperforming family fish shop, and a house she can't afford. In an early shot, Crudy and Cole pan across the harbor, only to have a distant car catch the camera's motion and become the shot's focus. This move is nice, but with cinematographer Todd Benhazi, Crudy and Cole's strength in Blow the Man Down lies not so much in camera work, but in camera placement, in film texture, and in the mise-en-scène that arises organically when you're making do with what you have and suddenly discover a cool location, like when a scene originally written on a houseboat becomes a chase through a maze of lobster traps. Crudy and Cole's strength is also in the characters they've crafted and the performances they've captured. Still, that early shot is an apt metaphor for a movie that says, no, the story's actually over here, with these women who are usually in the background. Here's what it's like from their perspective when a body washes up on the beach. Oh, and Blow the Man Down has sea shanties. Oh my, are there sea shanties? This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Jason Goldman. Deep beneath the frozen surface of the Arctic swims a sea unicorn. In reality, it's a whale with a spiral tusk sprouting from its head, the narwhal. Biologists have long debated the purpose of male narwhal's tusks. The tusk, like those of elephants, are actually elongated teeth. And since narwhals are usually below the sea ice, it's tough to see how they use their tusks.
It turns out we don't know pretty much anything about them because they're impossible to study really in the wild.
Arizona State University evolutionary biology graduate student Zachary Graham. He wondered if the male's tusks were a sign of status as a potential reproductive partner. Comparing tusk size to the whale's overall body size could provide evidence.
One of the main trends that has been documented in over 100 different animals and 100 different traits is that there's disproportional growth. We call that hyperallometry, and all that means is that the sexual trait is growing disproportionately compared to the rest of the body. So it's not like the biggest narwhal is just a scaled up version of a baby narwhal. What we see is that the tusk is disproportionately long. And then we also see that there's intense variation.
So Graham and his team turned to measurements collected from 250 adult males over 35 years.
The majority of them are from the Inuit hunt. So the Inuit have been killing narwhals for thousands and thousands of years, and anytime they do that, the Greenland Institute of Natural Resources asks them to collect a bunch of data.
Turns out the length of the tusks can vary widely, even for males the same size, ranging from 1.5 feet to more than 8 feet. The finding is in the journal Biology Letters. The top tusks thus appear to be like a billboard that shouts, "Look at me, I'm the biggest." After all, only the strongest, best-fed individuals can afford to produce such an ostentatious ornament. Of course, tusks can do more than just say,
"Hey, how you doing?"
The fact that these narwhals always have these scars on them makes us think that it's likely a communication structure that also functions as a weapon.
For Graham, there's also a larger issue. Some evolutionary biologists have recently proposed the hypothesis that groups of animals with elaborate sexual signals are more likely to speciate and diversify than those without.
We know that the world is changing around us more than ever, so understanding how and why some species are going to be able to adapt and deal with this is key if we're to protect and manage the species that we have on Earth today.
Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Jason Goldman.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
For an expectant mother, taking care of her developing baby means taking good care of herself. One way she can do this is by ensuring she gets vaccinated. If a woman is or might be pregnant during flu season, it's especially important to get her annual flu shot, preferably before the end of October. In addition, women should be vaccinated against whooping cough during the 3rd trimester of each pregnancy. Failure to get vaccinated places both mother and baby at increased risk for serious complications of these infections, including hospitalization and even death. If you're pregnant or planning to get pregnant, ask your healthcare provider when you should get your vaccines. Thank you for joining us on A Minute of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
I'm probably okay to have one more drink before I drive home. I'm probably okay. I open the window to stay alert. Probably okay. I just popped some gum in my mouth.
Step out of the car, please.
I probably made a mistake.
Probably okay isn't okay when it comes to drinking and driving. If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Welcome to 60 Second Civics, the daily podcast of the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. In his farewell address, George Washington warned against the dangers of party and faction. He believed in the virtues of nonpartisan government, in which patriotic citizens of different views would be willing to serve together. George Washington's great stature as a national hero and his willingness to serve for 2 terms bridged strong regional differences and gave the new government time to take root before party factions could become divisive. At the same time, however, Washington's belief in a strong executive and his nationalist sentiments inclined him to favor Alexander Hamilton's policies over Thomas Jefferson's. Washington's warnings against party and faction to the contrary, he was in many respects the country's first Federalist president. That's all for today's podcast, 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 2006. That was the day of massive protests for immigrants' rights in cities throughout the United States. Starting in March of 2006, there was a series of coordinated protests in response to a bill passed by the United States House of Representatives. The bill would classify undocumented workers as felons, and it proposed a wall be built along 1/3 of the U.S.-Mexican border. In total, more than 5 million people across the country protested that spring. And on this day, protests were held in more than 100 cities. On May 1st, or May Day, large protests reached numbers not seen since the civil rights demonstrations of the 1960s. CNN described the impact of the protests in Chicago, reporting kids skipped school, men and women walked off their jobs, others didn't bother to go to work, businesses shut down for lack of patrons or employees. The protesters dubbed the May Day event a day without immigrants. The aim was to withhold immigrant labor and buying power to show their impact on the U.S. economy. A study by the Pew Hispanic Center found that at the time, undocumented workers made up 24% of farm labor and 14% of construction labor in the United States. The protests had had an impact. The bill that would harshen penalties for undocumented workers did not pass the Senate. The AFL-CIO also recognized the importance of reaching out to immigrant workers. In August of 2006, the AFL-CIO introduced a National Worker Center partnership. For the first time, worker centers, many of which organize immigrant workers, could enter into formal partnerships with the AFL-CIO. Working with immigrant workers remains an important front in today's labor movement.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
A staggering 16.8 million Americans lost their jobs in just 3 weeks, a measure of how fast the coronavirus has brought down the world's economies. And still more job cuts are expected. The U.S. unemployment rate in April could hit 15%, a number not seen since the end of the Great Depression in the 1930s. Even as 17 million Americans sought unemployment benefits, a large number appear to be falling through the cracks. They can't get through jammed phone systems or finish their applications on overloaded websites. And now there's a whole new category of people seeking help: gig workers, independent contractors, and, self-employed people. Although the $2.2 trillion economic relief package for the first time extended unemployment aid to cover those workers when they lose their jobs or income, most states have yet to update their systems to process those applications. But even more alarming than those terrifying numbers is the idea that the Trump administration is pushing to reopen much of the country as soon as May 1st. In his daily White House propaganda session using commandeered TV time on Thursday, Trump dismissed concerns that a nationwide coronavirus testing system is needed before people are sent back to work.
The administration discussed the possibility of reopening the country when the administration does not have an adequate nationwide testing system for this virus. Don't you need a nationwide testing system for the virus before you reopen?
We have a great testing system. We have the best, right now, the best testing system in the world. But there are certain sections. There are certain sections in the country that are in phenomenal shape already. Other sections are coming online. Other sections are going down. And we, in addition to that, are giving out millions of tests, and every day we're doing it exponentially. We're picking up, and what we'll be doing in the very near future is going to certain areas of our country and do massive testing. It's not necessary, but it would be a good thing to have.
Don't you need that, though, Mr. President, to make sure people are safe going back to work? You don't want to send people back to the workplace.
We want to have it, and we're going to see if we have it. Do you need it? No. Is it a nice thing to do? Yes.
And if that's not bad enough, despite the lies Trump has told about the widespread availability of tests for anybody who wants one, he's also pulling federal funding for drive-through testing sites effective Friday. The COVID-19 death toll in the U.S. reached 16,686 people early Friday, with more than 469,000 confirmed cases. The number of new deaths fell to 1,783 on Thursday after two consecutive one-day highs of 1939 and 1973 on Tuesday and Wednesday. New York alone now has confirmed more coronavirus cases than any country in the world outside of the U.S. Of the 466,299 total confirmed cases nationwide, about 162,000 of them are in New York, and things are likely going to get worse. Models show the U.S. will probably reach its peak death rate on Sunday. In New York, the epicenter of the outbreak in the United States, the rate of new infections and hospitalizations continued to slow, suggesting the crisis there is plateauing. But health experts and economists warn that a return to normal too soon could result in a resurgence of COVID-19. Senate Democrats on Thursday blocked a Republican bill seeking $250 billion in additional funding for loans to help small businesses weather the coronavirus crisis. Democrats want to double the size of the package to include aid for hospitals, state governments, and people needing food assistance. Democrats also want to give states more funding for mail-in voting efforts, but Trump and congressional Republicans are railing against that idea. Top Democrats want the initiative included in the next coronavirus stimulus package to address the dangers voters face going to the polls in the midst of a pandemic. They want to expand vote by mail and early voting for all states, as well as allow for same-day voter registration across the country. Trump and the Republicans have rejected the idea, claiming that mail-in voting would jeopardize the integrity of elections. The impasse could become a major sticking point as Congress negotiates their fourth big-ticket attempt at propping up the national economy. In the meantime, the Federal Reserve announced a new $2.3 trillion round of loans that include even more support for small businesses and consumers, and for the first time for states, cities, and municipalities, too. The package includes several new 12-figure lending programs, including $500 billion in loans and $35 billion in credit protection to states, Washington, D.C., and large counties and cities. Former Vice President Joe Biden on Thursday reportedly stepped up efforts to unify Democrats by adopting pieces of Senator Bernie Sanders' presidential platform after Sanders suspended his campaign. Bernie spoke with Chris Hayes on MSNBC Thursday night and explained that Joe Biden's making a little bit of progress moving to the left.
He is now on board in making public colleges and universities tuition free for folks who are under $125,000 a year. He's now on board in canceling student debt for those who have been at public colleges and universities and HBCUs. I would have gone, obviously, a lot further, but that is a movement in the right direction. Not far enough to my mind, but it is a movement, an important movement. Today, he announced that he would support reducing the eligibility age for Medicare from 65 down to 60. Again, a step in the right direction. There are a whole lot of millions and millions of people, 62, 64 years of age, who desperately want to get into Medicare. They will be able to do it. Again, I believe, needless to say, that we should move toward a Medicare for all program for all of our people, and that if there's anything this crisis is now showing us is the weakness of the employer-based healthcare system, because when millions of people are losing their jobs, they're not only losing their income, they're losing their healthcare as well. But I think what you will see is the vice president beginning to move in a more progressive direction.
All right, moving in the right direction. We still got a way to go.
I got good
And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com. While you're there, please click on that donate button.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 44 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting only a high in the mid-70s, because we were bumping 80 yesterday. Overnight lows should be in the mid-40s. Plenty of sunshine today. Winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Winds out of the northwest and will remain so overnight. Shifting ever so slightly tomorrow out of the north-northwest at the same clip. And we're only expecting a high in the low 70s tomorrow. And Sunday should be in the low to mid-70s, and then mostly in the mid-70s for next week. Overnight lows should be around the mid-40s. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County here in Southern Oregon has now increased to 44, with no reports of anybody dying from coronavirus. Barometric pressure in the region is falling at 30.08 inches. Visibility is up to 9 miles, and relative humidity is at 88%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 78 degrees and sunny, and their prime minister has been moved out of ICU, but they said he's gotten a little bit sicker today. Paris is 78 and sunny. Rome is 70 degrees and sunny, and they all have coronavirus, by the way. Kyiv is 54 and fair with coronavirus. Kabul is 60 degrees and mostly cloudy with coronavirus. Hong Kong is 67, partly cloudy with a flattening of the curve, but they have more incidences of people who have been cured of coronavirus who are now testing positive again. Tokyo is 48 and fair with a lot of coronavirus. Sydney, Australia is 59 and clear, and they're seeing even more coronavirus. San Francisco, California is 52 and sunny with coronavirus. And New York is 43 and cloudy with the poor and the unknown and the elderly with no family being buried in Potter's Field in mass graves because of coronavirus. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Lydia Kelly of Reuters brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A powerful cyclone that hit the Pacific Island nations this week, bringing death, injuries, and destruction, cannot be allowed to disrupt containment efforts against the spread of the coronavirus, officials in the region said. Cyclone Harold, a Category 5 storm with winds in excess of 156 miles per hour, passed through the Solomon Islands, Vanuatu, Fiji, and Tonga cutting power and destroying holiday resorts. Dozens of people were killed when they were swept off a ferry off the Solomon Islands. Tonga's government said today the island of Ua was without electricity and a number of houses were damaged, but no deaths had been reported. And no deaths were reported in Fiji, though 26 people were injured and more than 6,000 were evacuated from their homes during the storm. Although Fiji has just 15 coronavirus infections and no deaths, unnecessary gatherings of more than 20 people among other curbs had been banned, and people urged to stay home. Australia said it has already started helping with the cleanup in Solomon Islands and offered support to Fiji. The whole Pacific Island region has relatively few cases of COVID-19, but much of the region has restricted personal movement to slow any spread of the pandemic. Solomon Island police imposed a curfew on the nights of April 10th and 11th, restricting the movement of people. Fines of thousands of dollars and imprisonment will apply for breaching the law.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The Center-Right Research and Analysis Institute, the Jamestown Foundation, said that Russia's move to label it undesirable will not impact its operations and further reporting about the country's North Caucasus region. Russia, on Wednesday, labeled the Washington-based group an undesirable organization, potentially paving the way for it to be banned in the country. The General Prosecutor's Office said it concluded the publications by the Jamestown Foundation were aimed at fanning separatism in some Russian regions, particularly in the North Caucasus, and constituted a security threat. The Jamestown Foundation's president, Glenn Howard, said in a statement that the group has no office or staff who work in Russia. Therefore, the issue of being declared undesirable is moot to begin with and will have no impact on our operations or further reporting about the region. Now, the Jamestown Foundation was started in 1984 as pretty much a think tank against Soviet occupation and influence around the world. And pretty much had all the old Soviet fighters right there in their organization. And they continue to have Dick Cheney on the board. So that tells you a little something about where Vlad is at and where we should be. All right, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and the week. But you do know that Netroots Radio is going to broadcast on, and we will meet up on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here on Monday, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.